Book Review: The Silent Patient by Michaelides. Michaelides' debut psychological thriller The Silent Patient took the literary world by storm upon its release in 2019. It quickly became a #1 New York Times bestseller, was optioned for a film adaptation, and gained a loyal readership through word-of-mouth praise. At the heart of its appeal lies a taut, clever narrative that blends psychological suspense with classical tragedy, delivering a shocking twist that leaves readers reeling. This review explores The Silent Patient through a detailed examination of its narrative structure, character development, psychological realism, thematic resonance, and its effectiveness as a thriller. Plot summary: Michaelides' The Silent Patient is a psychological thriller that intricately weaves together a story of trauma, obsession, silence, and truth. The novel begins with a shocking act of violence. Alicia Berenson, a renowned London painter, is found standing next to the body of her husband, Gabriel, after shooting him 5 times in the face. From that moment on, she never speaks a single word. Alicia's silence turns the crime into a cultural obsession. Her artwork gains a cult following, particularly a painting titled Alcestis, named after a heroine from Greek mythology who willingly dies for her husband. The painting is her only public response to the murder. With no clear motive and Alicia refusing to speak, the mystery deepens. Why did she kill Gabriel? Was she mentally unstable, or is there more to the story than anyone suspects? Enter Theo Faber, a forensic psychotherapist who becomes fascinated, borderline obsessed, with Alicia's case. When a position opens at the Grove, the secure psychiatric facility where Alicia is being held, Theo applies with one goal in mind: to get Alicia to talk. Convinced he can reach her when others have failed, he begins therapy sessions that are as much about his personal journey as they are about Alicia's healing. The novel unfolds primarily through Theo's first-person narration, but it also includes excerpts from Alicia's diary, written in the days leading up to the murder. This dual narrative structure gives the reader 2 windows into the mystery: Theo's investigative, analytical lens, and Alicia's more intimate, artistic voice. As Theo digs deeper, he uncovers unsettling truths about Alicia's marriage, family, and psychological state. He interviews her relatives, acquaintances, and friends, each offering conflicting portraits of Alicia and Gabriel. Her art dealer, her cousin, a jealous gallery assistant, and even her former therapist all have versions of events that paint Alicia alternately as a tragic figure and a dangerous woman. Still, nothing explains her silence. Meanwhile, Theo's own life begins to unravel. He is dealing with the emotional aftermath of his abusive childhood, and his marriage to Kathy is falling apart after he discovers she is having an affair. These personal crises parallel Alicia's in subtle ways, highlighting one of the novel's central themes: how unresolved trauma can distort perception and shape behavior. As Alicia begins to trust Theo, she finally breaks her silence, not through speech, but by giving him her secret diary. In its final pages, the twist is revealed. Theo himself was the masked man who broke into Alicia and Gabriel's home on the night of the murder. His intention had been to scare Gabriel as revenge for his own marital betrayal, but Gabriel's cowardice, choosing to let Alicia die rather than offer himself, shattered her. In response, Alicia killed him, not just out of rage but also a sense of ultimate betrayal. She recognized Theo later at the Grove but chose to remain silent, painting her truth instead. In the end, Alicia slips into a coma after being poisoned by Theo. But not before she leaves behind the final pages of her diary, exposing him. Theo is arrested, and the novel closes with the chilling realization that the true villain was hiding in plain sight all along. Michaelides crafts a tense, layered narrative that keeps readers guessing while exploring deep psychological wounds. The use of Greek mythology, unreliable narrators, and shifting timelines all serve to enhance the emotional and psychological complexity of this unforgettable thriller. Narrative structure and pacing: Michaelides constructs the novel using a dual-layered narrative, first-person narration from Theo interspersed with Alicia's diary entries. This structure is highly effective in drawing readers into the psychological depths of both characters. The primary narrative, Theo's point of view, creates an illusion of linear discovery. As Theo digs deeper into Alicia's past, questioning friends, family, and acquaintances, the reader is lured into the role of detective, slowly peeling back layers of Alicia's enigmatic silence. Interspersed throughout the narrative are diary entries Alicia wrote in the weeks leading up to the murder. These entries serve a dual purpose. First, they give Alicia a voice, ironically in a book where she is defined by her muteness. Second, they are a masterstroke of misdirection. By letting Alicia speak, in fragmented, reflective prose, Michaelides creates an eerie intimacy with her that heightens suspense and emotional engagement. The pacing is masterful. Michaelides never lingers too long on exposition or backstory, yet he provides just enough detail to build a rich psychological profile of each character. The chapters are short, many just a few pages, which propels the reader forward. The sense of urgency intensifies as the story nears its climax, and the final twist is delivered with surgical precision. Character development, Theo Faber. Theo is the protagonist and narrator, and much of the novel hinges on how convincingly his voice is rendered. Michaelides constructs Theo as a man haunted by his own past, particularly his childhood with an abusive father, and driven by a need to heal both himself and others. He is earnest, intelligent, and flawed. His obsession with Alicia starts as professional curiosity but soon reveals deeper, more personal motivations. Theo is a classic unreliable narrator. His interpretation of events, filtered through his own emotional biases, leads readers to trust him, until the truth snaps that illusion apart. The brilliance of the novel lies in how Michaelides plays with reader perception. Theo appears sympathetic and righteous, yet there are subtle cues of moral ambiguity and obsession. Only in retrospect do these hints coalesce into a portrait of a man with a far darker agenda than initially assumed. Alicia Berenson, though silent for most of the novel. Alicia is arguably its most compelling character. Her muteness creates an enigmatic aura, and yet, through her art and diary, she speaks volumes. Her painting Alcestis, named after the tragic heroine in Euripides' play Who Dies for Her Husband, encapsulates Alicia's emotional state, betrayal, sacrifice, and grief. Michaelides cleverly blurs the lines between Alicia's reality and her interpretation of events. Is she a victim of delusion? A traumatized soul? Or something else entirely? The reader oscillates between sympathy and suspicion. This duality is essential to the psychological tension that pervades the book. Psychological realism and thematic depth. Michaelides holds a background in psychotherapy and screenwriting, and both disciplines are evident in the book. He has a nuanced understanding of psychological trauma and therapeutic dynamics, though the accuracy of the psychiatric procedures is sometimes sacrificed for narrative drama. One of the novel's core themes is silence, both enforced and chosen. Alicia's refusal to speak is not only a personal response to trauma, but a powerful act of control. In a world that seeks to label and interpret her actions, her silence becomes an act of resistance. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that her silence has more meaning than anyone, including Theo, suspects. Another central theme is the nature of truth. Michaelides explores how perception shapes reality, and how trauma can distort memory. Everyone in the novel harbors secrets, and these half-truths culminate in a devastating revelation that reframes the entire narrative. Obsession and identity also surface repeatedly. Theo's desire to save Alicia mirrors his need to resolve his own unresolved trauma. Yet, his ethical boundaries blur, revealing how the savior can become a perpetrator. In both Theo and Alicia, Michaelides presents characters who are damaged and desperate to reclaim control, through silence, through storytelling, through manipulation. The twist, a closer look, spoilers ahead, the final twist, that Theo himself was the masked man who broke into Alicia and Gabriel's home, thus catalyzing the murder, redefines everything the reader believed. Alicia recognized Theo as the intruder and chose silence not out of trauma alone, but as a calculated act of justice, preserving her truth for the moment she could expose him. This twist is not merely a narrative gimmick. It underscores the theme of misdirection and the fragility of perception. Michaelides plants clues with skill: Theo's vague timelines, his convenient knowledge, his reactive emotional states. But these are subtly obscured by his confessional tone. The twist works not just because it's shocking, but because it's earned. Every piece fits once the truth is revealed. Readers who go back and reread the novel will notice the trail of breadcrumbs Michaelides laid throughout. Use of Greek mythology and literary allusions. Michaelides' inclusion of the Greek myth of Alcestis adds a rich literary layer to the narrative. Alcestis, who sacrifices her life for her husband and is later rescued from the underworld, becomes a symbolic parallel to Alicia. However, unlike the myth, Alicia's story ends in tragedy. Her voice finally recovered, but only through a confession that cost her everything. This allusion, and others peppered throughout the novel, such as references to Euripides, Freud, and classic tragedies, suggest that The Silent Patient is not merely a commercial thriller, but a novel with intellectual and emotional ambition. It seeks not only to entertain but to probe the ancient questions of fate, guilt, and redemption. Criticisms and controversies. Despite its acclaim, The Silent Patient has drawn some criticism: psychiatric inaccuracies. Some professionals have noted that the portrayal of Alicia's treatment, particularly the ease with which Theo gains access and conducts therapy, is unrealistic. Institutional bureaucracy, ethics, and patient care are simplified for narrative convenience. Character flatness in supporting cast. While Theo and Alicia are richly drawn, secondary characters, like Gabriel, Jean-Felix, and even Diomedes, sometimes feel like archetypes rather than fully realized individuals. Reliance on a twist. For some readers, the novel's power hinges too heavily on its twist. Once revealed, rereads may feel less compelling unless one is specifically looking for clues. However, for most readers, these drawbacks are outweighed by the novel's emotional intensity, elegant structure, and psychological intrigue. The Silent Patient. In the context of psychological thrillers, Michaelides' novel draws clear influence from classic psychological thrillers such as Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn and Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. Like these works, The Silent Patient plays with the unreliability of narrators, mental health as both theme and plot device, and the power of revelation. What sets it apart is the stillness at its core. Alicia's silence is not just a narrative hook, but a metaphorical abyss. The quiet between her actions speaks louder than words. In a genre often dominated by action and overt violence, Michaelides opts for psychological violence, insidious, creeping, and chilling. Conclusion: The Silent Patient is a masterclass in misdirection, blending psychological insight with compelling storytelling. It invites the reader into a puzzle, only to reveal that they've been looking at the wrong pieces all along. Michaelides' clever use of structure, character psychology, and classical allusion elevate the novel above genre conventions. It's not a perfect book, but it's an unforgettable one. In an era where thrillers vie for attention with increasingly outlandish hooks, The Silent Patient succeeds because it returns to something elemental: the mystery of human behavior, the unreliability of truth, and the power of silence. For fans of psychological thrillers, literary puzzles, and character-driven suspense, The Silent Patient is not just recommended, it's essential reading.